Hi everyone, I am Subhashish Sahu, Head of Marketing at FinFlow. Welcome to the fourth episode of AI in Finance, a podcast where we explore the perspectives of finance leaders on how AI is transforming finance teams and reshaping the way the office of the CFO functions. In this episode, titled The Finance Leaders Shift, focusing on data, decisions, and the rise of AI, I'm excited to have Roshan Shanker with us today. Roshan currently works as the director of finance at Microsoft Cloud and AI and brings over 20 years of experience driving financial strategy, operations, and scaling and building high performing teams. Having grown within one of the most complex and fast evolving finance environments, Roshan has had a front row seat into how finance teams have shifted and how they have functioned over the years, right from spreadsheets to advanced data platforms to now dealing with AI driven decision making. So, in this episode, we will unpack the shifts he has seen firsthand, how decision making has changed over the years, and where the next big opportunities lie for the finance leaders in the age of AI. Roshan, welcome to
Thanks,
the podcast.
Subhashis.
How
It's
have you been?
uh, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Amazing. So, Roshan, actually, before we dive into the crux of the conversation that we have in hand today, I would love for you to take us back to how this journey began and how you have evolved into what you are doing today so that the audience has a background of your experience so that they can relate to all the things that
Absolutely,
we
yeah.
say from.
So I grew up in India. I did my
Yeah.
undergrad in BITS Pilani. It was an engineering college, but I did end up doing it there. So my journey with finance began right from undergrad.
Okay.
I worked for about 5 years in India in a finance slash operations role before coming to the US for my MBA. I did my MBA at the Darden School of Business. Was there for a couple of years and got my internship with Microsoft. This was around the summer of 2008. It was a very
Hmm.
interesting time to be in both B school
Okay.
and to be looking out for a job in the US just because of how dynamic the industry was at the time due to the financial crisis. It was just about starting off at the time. So
Right.
definitely learned a lot in B school being
Yes.
there between 2008 and 2009. Graduated in 2009 and then joined full time with Microsoft. And I relocated to Seattle, where I am currently
Hmm.
located. And over the last 15 years, I've been
Okay.
at Microsoft in various different roles, in two, three different roles at Microsoft in Edmonton here. So that's been my experience. It's been a pretty exciting journey.
And a pretty long one too. It's been
Correct,
20
correct.
years, right? So I'm sure that must have been a very challenging as well as a very fulfilling journey that you have had. And it's great to be connected with you, Roshan. Now we'll actually move on to the crux of the conversation. So the first question for the day that we have in hand is like, as you said that you started your career back in India as a business
Yeah,
analyst with Capgemini, right? And now you're leading finance team at one of the biggest tech companies of the world. So while this transition happened, how has your approach with decision making evolved? Especially as finance has shifted from spreadsheets to data platforms and now AI driven solutions, right? Before, why the entire data was on spreadsheets where you did the manual math of figuring out what has to happen and how the decisions would be made, to then came the shift where that entire data shifted into platforms where you could play around, build reports right on the platform, extract from there, and then take decisions, to now actually AI doing that thinking process, doing the manual math, and you just working on the insights that are given by AI. So, how do
yeah.
you think this
Yeah, that's a
transition
great
happened
question. And
over the
it's definitely evolved a lot in my 15 years just being here at Microsoft. There's so many things
years?
that I've seen that has changed in a finance role. I would say the first thing I would say is
Okay,
we've gone from a backward looking to a more forward looking kind of a function. We used to be focused on past performance, the
right.
quarterly results, explain the variances, focus more on the what. But in more recent years, we've been more
Okay,
uh, trying to figure out why something is happening. So the emphasis right now, for example, is on predictive analysis or scenario planning, what if modeling, those kind of things. It
right.
basically it's more anticipating trends and trying to inform our partners, stakeholders and partners to make more proactive decisions. So that's one aspect in which it's changed. It's gone from more backward looking to more forward looking, I would
Got it.
say. Type of
Okay.
stakeholder and shareholder that we've had has evolved. Like our partners used to be Like we used to be a scorekeeper rather than a strategic partner. We used to focus a lot on reporting, budgeting, compliance. There
Okay.
used to be a lot of finance to finance engagements. Now we have become a strategic partner. We have become a collaborator. Rather than just acting as a control gate, which
Right.
is approves or denies, requests based on budgets. Now we are a collaborative advisor.
Right.
We help to shape decisions. We interact not only with the tech industry, we not only interact with engineers, but we interact with multiple other functions outside of finance. There's product teams, there's HR, there's go
Okay.
to market teams. So the kind of stakeholders that we are partnering with is also completely evolved, I would say. And that's completely evolved our decision making as well. And then the final
Okay.
thing I would say is
Okay.
we've gone from, and I briefly touched upon it, but we've gone from more recorders of information to more dynamic risk modeling. So rather than looking at static situations, and just because something has been happening over the last year, it doesn't need to continue to happen that way. We
Yeah.
try to do a lot of scenario analysis and a lot of dynamic risk-based modeling, basically increase our agility. I think that's something which has definitely changed in the last few years. We feel that because the industry is evolving at such a fast pace, especially something like the tech industry, we have to be able
Yeah.
to adapt very quickly and with a lot of agility. That means that there's a very low tolerance
Correct.
for us to do the same thing for a long amount of time. We have to be changing things fast. Our business changes fast, and as a finance team, we are expected to change fast as well in order to able to support the business in a functional fashion.
That's amazing to hear your thoughts on that. And I would agree that over the years, how finance as a function has evolved, as you rightly said, that from a backward looking function to a team that actually enables decisions for the business leaders, right? For the
Yep,
likes
yep,
of the CEOs, right? And that, in my opinion, has been the biggest shift. Because when you look at even the advancement in the technology space, right? Right now, if you look at the functions that is adapting to technology the most,
yep,
that is obviously finance. Because every finance leaders has gone ahead and understood the role of technology in their current ways of work, right? And that has gone ahead and created this mind shift change, which has enabled these leaders to become the strategic advisors to the CEO, ultimately driving not only financial decisions but ultimately driving the key business decisions that are in hand, right? And with that in the picture, we would also like to move upon, you briefly touched upon a few points that now you are moving towards predictive analytics. Would also love to know from your personal experience if there are any automation initiatives that you have championed or that you have been a part of, which you think created a big impact not only within your own company but also within the entire finance ecosystem,
yep.
to
So when
be
I think
specific.
about my early role
Yeah.
in finance, being an early talent at Microsoft, focused on finance, there was a very heavy reliance on Excel, manual data pulls, or static reports, those kind of things.
Okay.
Now, I would say the finance teams leverage
Right.
more real-time dashboards and ERP systems, and to a certain degree,
Right.
AI ML for forecasting as well. And I would say specifically on the real-time dashboards
Right.
portion, one area where I feel that we've made some progress is Power BI. Specifically at finance at Microsoft, we use Power BI
Okay.
quite a lot, and the usage of that especially has exploded over the last few years. The various benefits, I would say,
Okay.
one thing is before Power BI, we would refer to manually pulling data from fragmented systems. Now there's centralized data models that can be used to pull data live from governed sources. So everyone
Okay.
is seeing the same thing.
Correct.
And that's another thing, one version of truth, one source of truth. It's not just finance, but with Power BI, you can make your reports available
Right.
to other functions which don't necessarily have access to finance tools and reporting, like HR, for example, or our engineering teams, where they
Yep.
can look at revenue, headcount, COGS, bookings, all of this information in the same fashion that finance looks at it. So there's one version of truth. Version control also
Okay.
used to be a nightmare when we used to
Correct.
deal with Excel and all that with real time reporting and with refreshable dashboards. There's one version of truth, and there's no version conflicts. There's faster
Yeah. Correct.
decision making,
Correct.
And I would also say security has improved quite a lot because as finance leaders, we are looking at very sensitive information, very sensitive data. So being able to govern who has access to the data
Right.
and who is able to see some of these sensitive data, this sensitive data and reports is extremely important as a finance leader. And there's limited
Yeah.
control when you have Excel sheets floating around, but when you have an ERP at scale
Correct.
like Power BI, you can enforce role-based access and you can ensure that sensitive data, payroll
Correct.
information or P&L or forecast, they are secure and at the same time they are accessible to the right stakeholders. So that is also something which has evolved over a period of
Yeah.
time with the better financial systems like Power BI.
I think to add on to that, Roshan, as you said, version control was a big challenge when you used to work with spreadsheets. Just one entry into one cell of one tab of the spreadsheet could actually change multiple other factors within the entire spreadsheet if there are formulas involved, right? But with tools like Power BI coming into the picture, where you can, and as you said, with ERPs having access to particular data sets on for different roles, right, that eliminates all of this entirely. And also, if you look at this, the spectrum where we work at as a company, Finflow, right, we also believe in the same philosophy where we bring together data from multiple systems and then create a single source of truth, right, as you also said. And how that helps is, I'll just give you a quick example of how sales and finance
Yep.
teams collaborate, right? Whenever there's a new customer that is getting onboarded, or whenever there's a new invoice that is getting generated, there's always a conflict between the sales and finance teams, because the source of truth for a salesperson is obviously a CRM, and the source of truth for a finance person is, in majority
Yep.
of times, the ERP, right? But if the CRM and ERP systems are not talking to each other, then it creates a big data gap, or it creates a big gap in the way these leaders are taking the decisions. And I think technology or softwares which are enabling data
Mm.
synchrony between these multiple systems and creating that single source of truth are the way forward. And very well said in the way you have approached this at Microsoft. And I'm sure there would be a lot of these initiatives that you would have done that would have created a lot of like impactful results, right? But moving on from there, from talking about initiatives that have happened, we are living in the world of chat GPT and all these different LLMs and different agents that are being created left, right, center every day, right? But when we come to talk about AI in finance, it becomes very sensitive, because at the heart of all of this lies the data, as you said, right? If the data systems are not right, and if the data is not of good quality, there is no point of
Mm.
building an AI on top of it. But let's say that there is a company which has been able to go ahead and they have been able to get their data right. Now, for these sort of companies, what are you seeing as a finance leader? What are the different type of applications of AI that they
Yeah.
could leverage on today? And once they are able to do that, what do you think are also the areas where there's a big scope for AI to come in and help make the processes simpler, but they
Yep.
have not been tapped right now?
Yep.
So I'd love to hear that
Absolutely.
from you.
So there's a lot of excitement around AI over the last few years. Tons of different industries, different
Yeah,
functions have been trying to implement AI to improve productivity, to improve the way that people work. And finance is no different. There's a ton of opportunity
right,
here, and it's a natural fit because finance deals with the numbers and data. And wherever you have a large amount of data, it's a natural fit for AI to
correct,
come in as well. The most obvious situation is in
absolutely,
forecasting. Machine learning AI applications are really a very natural fit to places where you've got large amounts of data that you'd like to forecast. So, as you know, how machine learning works is you train the model with a set of historical data, and then there's an inferencing phase where you give
right,
it a bunch of inputs, and then it gives you the desired output, and then you can track it against it to see how you're doing. So, there's huge impact out here because it
right,
leads to if over a period of time, if you can begin to rely on something which takes in multiple factors and then bakes them into a
yeah,
black box and then increases the accuracy of a forecast, that is going to be beneficial for finance leaders once forecasting gets accurate. And there are various things that you can forecast. There's headcount, there's
correct.
expense, revenue, there's tons of things which has historical data associated with that you can go ahead and apply in forecasting. It's going to improve productivity. It's going to be faster cycles, better scenario planning. All of those things are really great benefits and impact of this one. So that's one aspect that I can think of is basically forecasting. One could be
Okay.
anomaly detection, as AI is really good at pattern recognition, and anything which deviates from patterns could be outliers which people might need to take a look at, especially finance leaders. From a finance or operational perspective,
Yep.
automated detection of fraud or expense outliers or any general ledger issues, all of these things also, there's huge potential for AI to act as a pattern recognition tool to point out to finance folks what might not be looking right and
Mm-hmm.
what needs to be corrected. So this has the benefit of actually reducing the manual audits that could take place or increasing just the accuracy of our reporting. That's another, I would say, potential application of AI in finance.
Yep.
Obviously, whenever you talk about AI, there's also huge
Okay.
talk about automation. So anytime that, whether it's reporting or
Yep.
close or your rhythm of business, all of that automation can help reduce the tactical load that finance teams have, use errors as well. And obviously, you can't ignore the AI chatbots as a potential area of
Yep.
AI application as well. Almost every single customer service related area right now is introducing chatbots to try to
Yeah.
a level of AI into there and all that. So something similar could be done and actually is being done with Excel, for example. We have features in Excel where you can feed it a data set or a large
Okay.
queries in there. And AI chatbots and natural language queries you can ask questions in natural language, like how much was the headcount for this particular geo in
Okay.
2005, and then the model itself will be able to understand the data and then be able to convert it to business intelligence and then give the natural response back. So that is, what might have been done
Right.
with an intern or a low level analyst in the past can very well be automated through AI as well.
Yep.
So that's another natural fit where I would say is one of the biggest untapped opportunities where we can apply, in the finance function.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing answer. Very well put together. I agree. I think the way finance leaders are able to leverage ML and AI to do forecasting was probably not possible if we look 5 years down the lane. So, because these technologies are new, could you also give us an example as to when we said that now you are spending lesser time in doing this forecast? Where exactly was actually took the majority of time in this entire process of forecasting? You talked about scenario planning as well, right? What were the exact areas under scenario planning that took a lot of time that has been eradicated with AI and
So I
now you're
wouldn't say
able to
that
do that
all of that is
faster?
completely eradicated by AI right now. It's definitely starting to, we are
Okay.
starting to implement ML driven models in finance, but I would say it's still an experimental
Yeah.
stage. Right now, whatever ML models we have
Okay.
for forecasting are running parallelly with our existing systems, just so that we can get a sense of comfort that the
Correct.
output of these ML models is making sense and too much from the manual process. So I think we are still in
Right.
that parallel phase at this stage. We haven't yet gone to a stage where ML has completely replaced our existing processes. But again, that's one of the areas where there's a huge opportunity. Something which might have been done by three or four can now be done by one person. That's definitely a huge opportunity for
Yeah.
forecasting to be taken over by ML in the future.
Correct. And you also mentioned about anomaly detection. Now, even when a forecast has to happen, right, there are certain level of patterns or anomalies that probably took hours of time of manual work to be detected. But now that these things are being able to be detected by an AI, like how do you think that is changing the way you are thinking about forecasting right now? Do you think, are you going ahead and trusting these detections that are being done by AI right now, or are you still going ahead and cross checking
Yeah.
it manually to see
Yeah, we are
for
still doing everything
not to make
manually at
sense?
this stage. I don't think even anomaly
Okay.
detection has reached that
Hmm.
stage where I would completely trust it. It's still early phases right
Hmm.
now for AI in our tools. Even something as simple where you just say check formula errors. Right now, there are features in Excel where you can go and say that, oh, this particular
Hmm.
formula is wrong. But what I want to do is understand the overall context. Say
Correct.
if a bunch of cells are saying some the columns from 10 to 20, but the last cell is saying some column 15 to 20, then it's potentially an area where the
Okay.
user might have made an error, that it's not really doing it properly. That might be an area where AI can step in and say, hey, did you mean this instead of that? And this is just a very simple example, but if
Hmm.
the AI can
Right.
understand the context of what the Excel model is trying to do and offer suggestions to make things better,
Right.
that could be
Yeah.
one potential area of improvement as well. Again, an untapped opportunity which hasn't currently been implemented, but just an idea for the future.
Correct. Correct. I think just to capitalize on the point that you said, that if AI is able to detect that anomaly and then go ahead and provide that suggestion,
Correct.
that is when it will become super powerful, and that is when it will actually help finance teams take decisions faster than
Correct.
how they what they are doing today. So also, if we think about it from an accounts receivables perspective, the area that we at Finflow to, right? The reminders that are being sent to customers, right? There are a lot of instances in which there are disputes that get raised right after a reminder is sent to a customer. And majority of the times, if there is a person who is sitting back looking at these disputes, they look at it as individual disputes that were raised by the customer, and it is often underlooked by the same person that whether or not a reminder that was sent which was the result of this dispute being raised. But for scenarios like this, if there is an artificial intelligence in the background that is able to figure out these patterns that are happening, right, that just helps the human to find out these anomalies faster. And that is why probably go ahead and think about the corrective
Yeah.
measures that can be done in this case, right, and probably take better steps the next time they are reaching out to the same customers. Absolutely agree that the applications of AI are immense right now, and they are obviously, and as you said, they are in the nascent stage, and there's still a big room to grow. But I think it is also about how you as a finance person is willing to use AI, right? You can actually use it to your advantage to reduce a lot of
Yep.
your manual tasks that you did. As you said, right, that there could be like five interns who would be processing probably 10 reports to figure out one insight that is needed by a
Yep.
leader like you to take a decision. Now you do not know probably need those five interns. Probably you would still need that one intern who goes ahead and does this
Yeah.
analysis via an AI and then submits you, or instead of just one insight that person could have generated with the limited amount of knowledge that they would have. Now because of these trained AI models, that person would
Yep.
be able to give you 10 insights, and those 10 insights would eventually help you take the decision about uh, finance much faster and much better. And it also increases your level of accuracy in which you are taking the
Yep.
decisions, because now there is data, there
Yeah.
is proven
Absolutely. Yeah.
insights that are being backed
Absolutely. It's
to
it's a
that
burst
decision,
in
right?
productivity. It's an
Correct.
increase in
Yeah.
accuracy. All of
Hmm.
those advantages are definitely present with the AI models.
Okay, so Roshan, will move on from here. I think we've talked a fair bit about AI in finance, but uh, to pick your level of expertise, because you've spent around 20 years, as 2 decades into the world of finance, so you have a very good idea of how the evolution has happened, how the technology is shaping up. So would love to hear from you, and this question is mostly going to be for your peers who are listening to you on this podcast. How do you think about the future of finance? I know that's very generic as a statement, but would love to know your thoughts on what are the next big challenges that you think you yourself as well as your peers are going to face in the coming future, and how do you think finance leaders are going to think about the evolution of technology, the evolution of the way the finance function is going to
That's a
work
great
in the
question.
future? Yeah.
There's multiple
Hmm.
areas where I think finance is headed, and if we think about the overall areas
Yeah.
that finance helps make an impact on an organization. There's top line, which is revenue,
Yeah.
and we're getting the pricing models in place. And then there's cost control. And apart from cost control, there's
Right.
also resource management, especially for those industries which are heavily on headcount and talent, like the tech industry, for example.
Right.
Workforce planning is going to be an extremely, always has been an extremely important part of finance, but going forward, dynamic end-to-end workforce
Yeah.
planning is going to be an extremely important component. I'm talking more about it first because that's the area that I'm involved in right now, and that's
Okay.
the area that I'm most familiar with. And being able to dynamic,
Understood.
especially in this fast changing world, is going to be an extremely critical finance skill to have in the future. When you think about talent management, like what are the different geos that the talent is available in,
Okay.
what kind of talent does an organization need, the time to hire to fill that particular talent, dynamic cost modeling, because the talent comes with different cost model. The more in demand talent like AI is more
Right.
expensive as opposed to a few other
Right.
talents. And then you have attrition prediction and being able to dynamically come up with a model which allows you to do this resource allocation in a very effective manner is going to be a very critical thing for finance leaders to do in the future. And not just look at the cost elements, which are important as well, but also in the tech industry, we specifically look at the product roadmap and life cycle. That's something which
Okay.
is extremely important. How do we partner really closely with our engineering teams in order to be able to inform the resourcing per their needs? If the teams really need a specific product to ramp up, we should be able to dynamically allocate the resources over there. So
Okay.
basically, make our partners more agile in terms of the decision making around resources. So there's a ton of really cool work
Understood.
that can happen in the area of workforce planning, specifically within the finance world. And I would also say the
Okay.
other thing
Super
I would also
insightful.
say is just being finance has done a tremendous job in the last few years, being really closely partnered with business and being able to do more. I mentioned a little bit at the beginning,
Yep.
looking forward versus looking back, like what we used to do before. Being able to proactively look around the
Right.
corner and inform our partners about what's coming up, even before they know they need something, giving that to them, that is going to be an extremely important that finance has to explore. Not just be backward looking and report based, but actively seek out what the risks are going to be,
Yep.
actively inform and enable them to make a decision before the sky actually falls on their head. So that is going to be a really important skill for finance to
Right.
develop in the future.
Yeah, that's super insightful. And talking about skill, right? I think you have seen it over the years. You have lived it yourself. Just as a parting question, Roshan, I would love to hear from you. Like, what would be your two pieces of advice for anyone who is looking to transition from an analyst to kind of becoming the head of finance at a particular company, right? What would be your advice to them as to how they should think about their careers right now? What are some key action items that they should definitely be doing to for
Yeah.
this transition to happen, right? Given that you have lived it yourself, would love to hear from
So
you.
I think of growth in three main areas, like learning and growth in three main areas. There's skills and knowledge. That's definitely non-negotiable. That's like the basic hygiene skills that you need to have. Know your tools really well. Know the how reporting works, what the rhythm of business is, and how things connect with each other. That's an extremely important part of succeeding.
Right.
That's what helps you build your credibility, especially earlier on in your talent and earlier on in your career at finance. And you then spring shot business knowledge. So every area of finance ends up supporting one particular business, whether it's sales, whether it's engineering, or in other industries, it might be other things as well. Being able to understand what's happening on the business side, because ultimately finance is the language of business. Just like maths is the language of science, I would say finance
Yeah.
is the language of business. So just like that, being
Right.
whatever business you're supporting, being able to understand that, apart from just your finance functional skills, being able to understand the business, it's an extremely important area for you to succeed, especially a mid to late career. That allows you to speak the same language as business partners. And that is extremely crucial, especially to build credibility with the broader organization. So that's the second thing I would say. First is financial skills, second is business acumen, and third is relationship. And this is true not only for finance, but relationship building is important in any aspect of development. I would say being able to form those relationships fast, being able to make those connections, being able to work across multiple groups and functions in your organization, that is an extremely important skill to succeed later on in the career, especially.
Okay, that's amazing. I think it was great talking to you, Roshan. I'm sure a lot of insights, a lot of key takeaways that are going to come out from this conversation. And to everyone that's listening to this podcast, we are at the end of the episode. I would again like to thank Roshan for joining us here today. But yeah, I would just like to say stay tuned and look forward to this episode. It is launching very soon.
Thanks. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, Roshan. Yep.